The envelope slid across Mara Ellison's desk before she even noticed who had delivered it. Miss Ellison, the receptionist called from the doorway, already halfway gone. This was left for you. No sender. Mara frowned slightly, her fingers pausing over the archival notes she'd been reviewing. The museum was quiet this early, just the low hum of climate control systems and the distant echo of footsteps in marble halls. She reached for the envelope. It was thick, ivory-colored, expensive. Her name was written across the front in precise, deliberate handwriting. Not printed. She didn't recognize it. Something about that unsettled her. Mara turned it over slowly. No seal. No logo. No return address. Just weight. Intentional weight. She opened it. Inside was a small, velvet-lined box. Her pulse shifted, just slightly, as she lifted it out and placed it on the desk. For a moment, she didn't open it. I'm overthinking this, she murmured under her breath, almost amused at herself. But her fingers hesitated anyway. Then she flipped it open. Inside lay a single brass key and a folded piece of paper. Her breath caught, sharp, unexpected. She unfolded the note. You always understood. That was all. No name. No explanation. But she didn't need one. Her throat tightened before her mind could catch up. Julian, she whispered. And just like that, the room felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Her eyes drifted, almost involuntarily, toward the West Gallery. Toward the painting. The first time she saw him, he hadn't said a word. He'd simply stood there. Mara had noticed him because he didn't move. Most visitors lingered for a few seconds, maybe a minute if they were particularly interested. But this man, tall, composed, dressed in a dark coat that probably cost more than her monthly salary, stood in front of winter stillness like the rest of the world had ceased to exist. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Mara watched from behind the information desk, curiosity slowly turning into something sharper. Finally, she approached. Is there something you'd like to know about the piece? She asked gently. He didn't turn immediately. When he did, his expression wasn't distant. It was focused, almost unsettling in its clarity. No, he said quietly. I understand it. Mara blinked, slightly caught off guard. Most people don't, she replied. A faint shift in his gaze. Not quite a smile. They look at her, he said, nodding toward the painting. But they don't see her. Mara crossed her arms loosely, intrigued despite herself. And what do you see? She asked. He studied the painting again before answering. A woman who has already accepted the outcome, he said. She's not waiting for someone to arrive. A pause. She's waiting for the moment she stops hoping they will. The words landed somewhere deep, unexpected, precise. Mara felt it before she could explain it. She glanced at the painting, the figure by the window, the muted light, the stillness. Then back at him. That's a very specific interpretation. It's not interpretation, he replied. It's recognition. That was the first time she felt it. Not attraction. Not even interest. Something else. Like she had just stepped into a conversation that had been happening long before she arrived. He didn't introduce himself. He simply nodded once and left. But he came back. 2 days later. Same time. Same painting. Same silence. Mara found herself watching for him, without meaning to. On the third visit, she spoke first. You always come at this hour, she said, stepping beside him. He didn't look surprised. It's quieter, he replied. You don't seem like someone who's easily distracted. I'm not, he said. But I prefer control over the possibility. She tilted her head slightly. That sounds exhausting. A faint exhale. Almost a laugh. It is, he admitted. That was the first crack. Small. But real. His name, she learned later, was Julian Ashford. The kind of name people recognized. The kind of man who funded buildings without attending their openings. She didn't know that at first. To her, he was just the man who stood in silence longer than anyone else. Their conversations grew slowly, carefully. Never long. Never unnecessary. But always meaningful. You study people more than art, he observed one afternoon. Mara glanced at him. Occupational hazard. No, he said. Choice. She smiled faintly. And what do you study? He considered that. Patterns, he said. In people. In everything. She leaned against the wall, curious. And what pattern do you see in me? He didn't answer immediately. That, more than anything, made her pay attention. You stay where things make sense, he said finally. Even when they stop making you feel anything. The words hit harder than she expected. Her expression shifted. Just slightly. That's not fair, she said. No, he agreed. It's not. And just like that, the moment passed. But it lingered. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into something that felt like presence. He never asked for her time, but somehow he always had it. One morning, Mara arrived to find the director waiting for her. There's been a donation, he said, his tone unusually careful. That's good news, she replied. It's significant. How significant? Enough to cover operational costs for the next 3 years. Mara froze. What? Anonymous, he added. But the instructions were very specific. Her stomach tightened. What instructions? That you oversee the allocation. Her mind didn't race. It settled. Quietly.
Julian, she said.
The director blinked. You know who it is? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked straight to the West Gallery. He was there. Of course he was. You don't like attention, she said as she approached. He didn't turn. It complicates things. You just donated enough to change the future of this place. Then focus on the future, he replied. She stepped in front of him this time, forcing eye contact. That's not how this works. A pause. It is for me, he said. Her frustration surfaced, sharper than before. You don't get to do something like that and pretend it doesn't matter. His gaze held hers. I didn't say it didn't matter, he said quietly. I said it doesn't need acknowledgement. Why? She pressed. Because acknowledgement creates expectation. And that's a problem? Yes. The answer was immediate. Firm. Final. Mara searched his face. You don't trust people to respond the way you want them to, she said. He didn't flinch. I don't trust outcomes I can't control. She exhaled slowly, shaking her head. That sounds lonely. This time he didn't answer. And that silence told her everything. From that moment on, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not visibly, but undeniably. They began to exist in each other's space more freely. A walk along the river after closing hours. A quiet dinner where conversation came in fragments, but meaning filled the gaps. You don't talk about your life, Mara said one evening. Neither do you, Julian replied. I asked first. A faint hint of amusement crossed his face. My life is structured, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm willing to give. She studied him. You're afraid of something, she said softly. His expression didn't change. Everyone is. Yes, she agreed. But most people don't build entire lives around it. That landed. She saw it. Just for a second. A flicker. And then it was gone. But she knew. She was getting closer. And that was exactly what scared him. She didn't open the envelope right away. It sat on the small wooden desk in her office, the cream paper almost glowing under the soft museum lighting. Her name, Mara Bell, was written in a familiar, precise hand. The same careful strokes that had labeled donation slips, catalog notes, margins of rare books he used to leave behind like quiet footprints. She traced the ink lightly with her finger. Why now? She whispered. But of course, there was no answer. There never had been, not in the way she wanted. Outside her office, the museum moved as it always did. Soft footsteps, hushed voices, the faint echo of curated silence. But inside, everything felt suspended, as if time itself was waiting for her to decide whether she was ready to know. She sat down slowly. Her breath caught as she finally broke the seal. Inside was a letter. Just one. No legal language. No formalities. Just him. Her hands trembled slightly as she unfolded it. Amara, if you're reading this, then I've done what I always do too late. I've left something behind instead of saying it when I should have. Her throat tightened instantly. She leaned back in her chair, blinking hard. No, she murmured. Don't start like that. But he had. And she kept reading. You once told me that silence can be kind. I think I used that as an excuse for too long. I told myself that what I felt didn't need words, that presence was enough, that you understood. A tear slipped down her cheek before she even realized it. But the truth is, I didn't understand you nearly as well as I thought. I thought you were patient. I thought you were willing to wait. I didn't realize that you were simply choosing not to ask for what I refused to give. Mara closed her eyes, her grip tightening on the paper. You always knew, she whispered. You just wouldn't say it. The room felt smaller now, heavier. She could almost see him standing there, hands in his pockets, gaze steady, saying everything without saying anything at all. There's a painting you once showed me, the letter continued. A woman by a window. You said she was waiting. I told you she wasn't, that she already knew nothing was coming. Her breath hitched. I think I was wrong. A long silence stretched as Mara stared at those words.
Wrong.
He had never admitted that. Not once. I think she was waiting. Just not forever. Mara pressed the letter against her chest, as if trying to steady something inside her that had started to break open. You took your time figuring that out, she said softly, voice trembling. She kept reading. I watched you walk through rooms that weren't built for you, and make them yours anyway. I watched you stand still in places that tried to move around you. I admired that. More than I ever said. Her lips parted slightly, breath uneven. I should have told you that I loved you. The words blurred instantly through tears. She laughed, but it came out broken. You think, she whispered. Not in grand ways. Not in ways that would have made sense to anyone else. But in the only way I knew how, through what I could give, what I could protect, what I could build around you. Her eyes squeezed shut. The donations, the endowment, the renovation, the quiet ways he had changed her world without ever stepping fully into it. I know now that it wasn't enough. A tear fell onto the page, smudging the ink slightly. But it was real. Silence filled the room again, but it felt different now.
Full. Heavy. Honest.
I left the museum in your hands not because you needed it, but because it needed you. And because, in some way, I wanted to still be part of your life, even if I wasn't in it the way I should have been. Mara's shoulders shook slightly as she exhaled. You were, she said quietly. You always were. If I misunderstood you, if I made you wait when you shouldn't have, I'm sorry. That word.
Sorry.
It landed deeper than anything else. She wiped her face quickly, though the tears kept coming. You did, she whispered. But I stayed anyway. Her voice cracked. And I don't even know why. But deep down she did. Because she had seen him. Even when he hid behind silence. Even when he chose distance over vulnerability. She had seen the truth in the spaces between his words. You deserved more than silence. Mara let out a shaky breath. I didn't want more, she said softly. I wanted you to try. The letter trembled in her hands as she read the final lines. I hope, wherever you stand now, you're not waiting. Her chest tightened painfully. And if you ever think of me, don't think of what I didn't say. A pause. Think of what I tried to show you. The last line was smaller, almost hesitant. Elias. The room fell completely still. Mara lowered the letter slowly, her gaze unfocused as everything settled around her. For a long time, she didn't move.
Didn't speak.
Didn't even try to hold back the quiet tears that continued to fall. Then, slowly she stood. Her steps were unsteady at first, but purposeful. She left her office without thinking, moving through the familiar halls of the museum as if drawn by something she couldn't resist. People passed her. Some greeted her.
She didn't respond.
She kept walking. Until she reached it. The painting. November alone. It hung exactly where it always had. Untouched. Unchanged. A woman by a window, her silhouette framed by soft gray light, her expression unreadable, caught somewhere between hope and acceptance. Mara stepped closer. Her reflection faintly appeared over the glass. For a moment it felt like she was standing inside the painting. She folded her arms gently, mirroring the woman's posture. Were you waiting? She whispered. The silence didn't answer. But it didn't feel empty. It felt understood. She tilted her head slightly, studying the figure again. Then, after a long pause, she shook her head softly. "No," she said. Her voice was steadier now. She wasn't waiting forever. A small, almost invisible smile touched her lips. She was just taking her time. Mara exhaled slowly, something inside her finally easing. Not disappearing, but settling. She glanced down at the letter in her hand one last time, then back at the painting. "You should have said it," she whispered. "A beat. But I saw it anyway." Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper, and then, gently, she folded it. Not as something unfinished, but as something complete. When she turned to leave, her steps felt lighter. Not because the story had changed, but because she had finally understood it. Outside, the late afternoon light spilled through the museum windows, warm and golden, softening everything it touched. Mara paused near the entrance, looking out at the world beyond the glass. People moved.
Cars passed.
Life continued. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was standing still inside it. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. She pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A message from a colleague. "Are you coming to the opening tonight?" Mara looked back at the museum one last time, then out at the fading light. She smiled, small but certain. "Yes," she typed. A pause. Then she added, "I'll be there." She slipped the phone back into her pocket and stepped outside. Not waiting, not wondering, just moving forward. And somewhere, in the quiet space between memory and meaning, the silence finally said everything it needed to.